Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the only place you can go to listen to two guys sitting on a couch to talk about movies, because no one ever does that.
No one's thought of that. We're geniuses.
We are innovators.
Yep.
We are mavericks ahead of our time, and you, our dear friends, allowing us to speak into your ear holes. You are lucky enough to be on the cutting edge.
Lucky you.
Yep. So I am Joel,
and I'm Ryan,
and we are here on the big blue couch, sitting talking about movies. Welcome, Ryan. How was your week this week?
I had a busy week movie wise. Yeah. This is probably audience, you probably listen to this around Thanksgiving or something, but for us, this is the week before the Halloween.
Correct.
Or the week before
holidays.
the week before Halloween, which for people who do their horror movie marathons, I'm sure some of you do, it's a key spot, and I do mine every year. I try the first week to get caught up on some classics or some, horror movies, Halloween related movies that have fallen by the wayside, and then the next week I try and watch whatever the few hottest things from last year were, because pretty much, there's some exceptions, but I pretty much only watch horror movies this time of year, and I'm not alone, I don't think, in that.
Do you go out? Will you go to the theater to see horror movies?
I used to, because I used to go to the theater twice a week even. I don't go to the theater much anymore. I collect movies and buy movies. Yeah. And
because of all the different platforms where you can get movies.
Well, right. There's not all movies are in the theater, and I like, I don't just like whatever the Cineplex stuff is.
Sure.
But so going to movies is a special occasion for me. This show, maybe if it takes off, it'll get me back into the theater. But
I have that same thought. Even
so we can be more topical.
There's that. But even as a kid, when I went through, like when I was in high school, when I went through my horror movie phase, I never really went to the movie theater. So I didn't have that collective, community experience of seeing a horror film with everybody jumping and screaming
and there's two ways of looking at it, and I wasn't going to talk about this because I got this handful of movies to roll through, but. Yeah. But it goes with your point, which is, there are two ways to watch horror movies. They these days, and I find this a little distasteful, but these days, when you see a commercial for a horror movie on TV that's a big hit, there's a very common thing where they show you the night vision shots of the audience, all jumping and whatever, reacting to it, and what they're selling is, this is fun. You're all going to sit there and you're going to get scared together, but that is, I'll admit that is fun. I kind of like, personally, I like kind of leaving the audience out of it. I think whenever you show audiences out on date night watching people get butchered and hung and all the horrible things that happen in movies, you make them complicit somehow. You make them the bad guy of the horror movie, honestly, which I don't really like. But what I do like is like watching, they're equally as effective when you're all alone and when the lights are off, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They work both ways. They truly do. I prefer the latter way, but that's not to say that a horror movie, a good one, isn't great in a theater with a crowd.
So what did you watch this week?
Well, first off, I got caught up on and maybe I'm going to say his name wrong, but I got caught up. You horror fans will know this guy. I got caught up on the films of T West, T.I. West.
So it could be Ty.
It could be Ty West. It probably is, and sorry for getting that wrong. But I looked around for a phonetic, and much. They assume I know how to say that, and I really didn't know.
Yeah,
so Ty West. I'll try not to say his name too many times so that I don't say it wrong either way.
Mr. West.
But he started out making horror movies, and he's been involved in the VHS anthology series and the Alphabet of How to Die. I can't remember what that one's called, but
right.
The ABCs of Death, I think. But he made a little movie called House of the Devil, which is filmed on 16 millimeters, and it takes place in 1983, and it's just his love letter to those old, terrifying, cheaply done films of the 70s and 80s. And it was all it was cracked up to be. It was very creepy and atmospheric, and it had sort of a gangbuster ending. And then he did another movie that I liked even more, although it seems to be less liked by the masses, which is called The Innkeepers, which is a couple of just kind of slacker. One's like a kid, and the other one's this old guy who's probably not old, but too old to be working behind the counter at a hotel.
Sure.
And they're kind of holding down the fort in this colonial New England hotel right as it's about to close. And they start investigating all the rumors of the things that have gone on in the hotel. And that one worked really well for me, actually, Innkeepers. So that's a winner. Then I watched his next movie. What?
I was going to say, what are the years on, like, how recent are these guys?
Well, they're sort of recent,
Okay.
but they're, like I say, I'm behind the times on them. House of the Devil came out in 2009, so not ancient history.
Yeah, no, okay.
Innkeepers a couple years later in 2011, and then he's made a few movies since then, but the other horror-related movie is this found footage movie where actually Vice News, an actual news company that is real, goes down to some South American country and follows a cult down there, basically. So that one's pretty effectively done, but there's only one sort of story of a cult that we all know that's super famous, and this hits all the beats of that, and that's can be terrifying, but it's got a really good performance by the old guy who plays the father. He's called the father.
Okay.
Give him a name.
The leader of
that one I liked less. With Innkeepers and House of the Devil, I don't know. Horror fans probably have seen these. They're very popular festival movies, and got him a reputation. So there's those three. And then the other ones worth mentioning are the films of Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. And they got 3 movies, too, that I'll try and keep this brief, but I'll briefly mention because these I liked even better. These were more my style of films. They're almost science fiction films rather than horror movies, but they certainly have their horrific moments. It starts with this movie called Resolution, which is a movie where a guy comes out. Guy's got his best friend from high school or whatever is a crack addict, and he's squatting in this shack on an Indian reservation, and he comes out and pretends like he's coming for a visit. But what he does is he handcuffs him to the radiator or whatever, and wants to get him to dry out because he thinks he's going to kill himself, which he is. He kind of says, this is how I want to go out.
Right.
So leave me alone. And he figures, well, let me get you sober, and if you still want to kill yourself, then, I can't babysit your whole life. I'll leave you to it. But that's his mission over about 5-6 days. Get him off crack and get him to decide. The amount of weird things that happen to these guys in those 5 days the list is really impressive. If you like a mystery and you like that sort of casual interaction between friends, you listen to our show, so we assume you like that at least a little. Or you can turn it off now because that's about what we're gonna deliver today. It's great. Resolution. It's low budget. It's art house. It's about weird ideas. There's nothing truly, if you really want to a movie where the cat jumps out of the cupboard or
Yeah.
it doesn't have jump scares and it's about ideas, but it gets under your skin. And then they did a follow-up to that movie somehow called The Endless, and this just came out last year. And The Endless is this very clever kind of sequel to Resolution. And I admit, I didn't even know that, and I almost wish I didn't know that but our friend Michael, who might as well give him a shout out every show, I was talking to him, these are the movies I'm going to watch, what do you think? And he was like, oh, that's great, it's a sequel to Resolution, so if you haven't seen Resolution, see it. And I'm like, I've seen Revolution, so I was really excited. The Endless is, again, a continuation on the same ideas, but in a parallel story.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it is a sequel, but it's not it's an indirect sequel.
Sure. They certainly take place in the same universe.
Very much so, and
okay.
feature some of the same people, and have essentially the same essential mystery, but both films come at it from totally different places. Plus, Resolution doesn't spell things out for you, and I think The Endless maybe does. I don't know if that's a spoiler, but The Endless you really get a handle on what was going on in Resolution from watching The Endless in a way you didn't from just watching Resolution. Both really good movies. Those guys have another movie called Spring, which is a horror romance. I almost call it a romance horror.
Horror-mance.
Yeah, I don't know, but it really is that, and it's very effective as that. All three of those are fairly... The Endless has got some neat effects and some tricks, but all three of those, really all six of these are fairly low budget. Whatever. And then last night I watched I don't know what you'd call it, like a tween horror movie called The Secret of Marrowbone.
Oh, The Secret of Marrowbone.
And I really like that too. That's from the writer of The Orphanage, which I think is one of the best ghost stories ever.
Yeah.
And The Impossible, about the tidal wave in Thailand.
Yes.
And somewhere in the Pacific, which is a great movie too. So his directorial debut is this. I don't know. To call it what it is to give it away. It's another. Is it supernatural? Is it not? Sort of mystery with some very appealing young actors. And I thought I'd throw that one in there too, because by next time I will have forgot. So that I've watched actually more than that, but those are the ones. We'll give them a plug and see if it goes anywhere.
That's great. That's impressive.
Yeah. I got a lot of time on my hands. So.
The only sort of, and it's not really scary, but it goes with the cult movie. I watched the series on Netflix, Wild Wild Country.
Oh yeah.
About the cult the religion, the Rajneesh people in Oregon, and it was it was fascinating. It was terrific. It wasn't frightening. It's only the people who they tie the uproar with the Rajneesh, at least as the documentary posits, came directly out of the Jonestown Massacre,
right?
And
which is the same infamous cult that I was referring to earlier.
Yeah. So you have you have the Jonestown Massacre happens, and it just stokes the fire of this paranoia of cultism and alternative religious fervor, and so it was fascinating. I feel like I'm a little late to the Wild Wild Country party. A lot of people have already seen that. But,
sure.
But again, the Duplass brothers, they've shown that they have a knack for documentaries as well as regular films. So I watched that, and then I finally got caught up in the Marvel universe, watching Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Oh yeah, was that good?
Oh yeah. Yeah, just really fun. I think the Ant-Man, the original Ant-Man movie and the Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think that they put a premium, especially when you have a star like Paul Rudd in it. There is a premium on this needs to be entertaining. This needs to be fun.
Sure.
There needs to be lots of
and
humor.
That's probably the only way to do Ant-Man conceptually is to give it a lighter touch.
Yeah,
So
that's
smart.
I thought it was fun. I thought it was a good continuation of that part of the world. It does it does an okay job explaining why Ant-Man wasn't part of the Avengers. Infinity War Part 1.
Does it take place chronologically after Infinity War?
No, it takes place concurrent.
Oh.
Because and you realize this in the post-credit sequence, which is obviously the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Anyone who likes Marvel movies knows to stick around through the credits.
Yeah.
It was entertaining. It was a very fun movie.
Cool.
So that is our week. That is our catch up on our week, and that of course means we move on to the meat segment of our show.
It's a doozy this week.
It is a doozy. Yeah, you guys are in for a wonderful treat. So let's hit it. Let's hit the countdown.
10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, yeah, that's right, folks. Hop a ride on a luck dragon, turn a crack into stone, and follow the six-fingered man to the evil Bavmorda's castle. It is the top 10. We're doing 10 because we just couldn't narrow it down. The top 10 fantasy movies from the 1980s.
Yeah, of course it's from the 80s. We're from the 80s, We were born in the 70s, but 70s kids.
No, we're
grew up
children.
in the
We're
80s.
products of the 80s.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And we're living in a great time because Hollywood seems determined to reboot and remake every movie at least from 1984 for sure. And just they want to please us right now.
Right. That
won't last forever.
No,
it's going to be all Saved by the Bell remakes and
relaunching. Figuring out the next chapter of Dawson's Creek.
Exactly that. We're not going to like that.
No, but by then we'll be old and we won't like anything.
That's true. We'll have a lot to complain about.
Yeah. So let's jump right in it because, like I said, we have 10. We have 10 movies instead of 5 from the last.
And
last
they really will inspire a lot pretty and discussion from us, I expect.
Yeah, because the number of fantasy movies in the 80s is pretty substantial.
It is. There's about 20-ish of them, 24, and that's maybe doesn't seem like a lot, but more than one a year. And at least a dozen really significant ones.
And there are, and we're trying to we try really hard to really keep our definition of fantasy movie pretty narrow.
Pretty narrow, yeah.
Yeah, because
right.
There's lots.
You could expand.
Yeah,
on
there's
quite a bit.
there's the forever debate of sci-fi versus fantasy. And we have, as Ryan and I discovered this week, we'll have quite a discussion regarding
for a later date.
Yeah, for a later date on some movies.
A semantic discussion. I try and
obviously some fantasy movies get labeled as adventure movies, and
and some are. There's a lot of cross
and there's
genre,
a lot. Yeah, that Venn diagram there can be a lot of overlap.
There's plenty of fantasy elements in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, for example.
Exactly that.
But to us, that's a classic adventure template that it follows. So those won't be on our list here today.
No. But
there were to finish my point. Sorry, before we head into the list, there were almost no fantasy movies in the 70s.
Sure.
Almost none. There were a few animated ones and a couple of things that you could call, but that genre in a literary sense was not explored at all, probably for budgetary reasons and for other reasons.
Yeah.
The 60s and 70s, I don't think fantasy stories were considered everybody entertainment.
And it kind of was a bellwether when they took the trolls and the unicorns out of The Godfather. It kind of signaled a time where
you knew then that it was going to be a dark decade for fantasy.
Yeah.
because the whole unicorn, the illegitimate unicorn child, read it, The Godfather, and you'll see.
And that was one of the original reshoots because, of course, it was originally a unicorn head in the bed.
Right.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Which, but everybody knows that.
Yeah.
All right. So number 10, our number 10 movie. Again, this and maybe the reason why it's at number 10 is it just sort of have that fantasy / adventure a vibe to it, but it is 1986's The Golden Child.
Yeah, that was a neat pull. You had that on your list, and I wouldn't have thought of The Golden Child. I do think of it as an adventure, but plenty of fantasy elements in it.
It's got the
question.
mystical elements, the quests in Tibet, and the giant winged devil demon. With that Charles Nance turns into.
There's a big giant fight out with what is essentially a dragon at the end of for story purposes. It's a St. George versus the dragon pretty much showdown.
And
even
it's
though
really,
he is a demon, really,
it's really it's kind of putting Axel Foley. Into a fantasy
Indiana
setting.
Jones movie, basically.
Essentially. So, and so it's Eddie Murphy at the height of his Eddie Murphy powers, where he has a really great ability to be incredibly funny and silly and goofy, yet he does manage, he absolutely has the heart and soul to carry a film.
Right. Well, and he walks the line of being on the audience's side, and that he's incredulous and he's a skeptic about all this stuff, and he's constantly undermining it and joking about it. And yet, as a hero, when it's his time to step up, take that stuff seriously and fight against it, or do some, pass some sort of test that's put before him, he does a great job of doing it. So it's a pretty decent balancing act by Eddie. He's really good in that film.
Yeah, it's a really.
He gets to have it both ways. That doesn't always work, and it really does.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It doesn't always work, and it does, and it did for me and my friends when we watched the film a lot. It was one of those that was in constant rotation because it's really quotable. Which was a big part of movies. Maybe still is. If you can have a movie that's quotable, it tends to last. It tends to have.
I wish there was
power.
A quote where there isn't. I wish there was a quote for the look that he's given that woman with the puppy or whatever on the talk show at the beginning, where he's just giving her the stink eye or whatever. The classic Eddie Murphy.
The look. Yeah.
Because he's on there like trying to find missing children or something, and then the local news brings on this total puff piece and makes him sit there Johnny Carson style while she's doing her bit. It's very funny.
Yeah. Eddie Murphy.
Yeah,
it's good stuff.
It is.
So
at the height of his powers. It's really good
He's
stuff.
Eddie Murphy at his most Eddie Murphiness.
Yeah.
So number 9.
Number 9.
Is Terry Gilliam's Time Bandits.
Right, and it's just going to have to stand in for. I don't consider Brazil necessarily a fantasy, but maybe it is, and it certainly has elements of it too, and certainly Adventures of Baron Munchausen is a fantasy that didn't make our list.
Yeah.
I think of those movies, even including Brazil, which is smarter and meaner and kind of more perfect.
Right.
Time Bandits, to me, from a Terry Gilliam standpoint, is the archetypal thing of a movie that he wrote and directed. It's the perfect template for him, from the celebrity cameos that you get hit with to just the skewering satirically of all the different, not only the different eras that the time travelers and time bandits travel to, but the type of films that take place in those eras. Like, it all happens. Which I can't, I could talk about Time Bandits all night, but the personification of how funny it is to me when they actually travel back to Sherwood Forest, and it's just this, it's like it would be. It's this ugly, dirty, terrible place where everybody's rolling around in the mud and barely surviving and starving, and
Yeah.
it has this very down in the dirt, realistic take on what that era would have been like when the king was gone at the Crusades and England was, an anarchy all practically.
Yeah.
And then John Cleese walks out in this perfectly clean green velvet, with the big long hat as Robin Hood.
Yeah.
So, jolly good. Just being a preposterous English caricature. It's hilarious.
Right.
It just shows you how much BS all of it is,
Right.
And Terry, he's great at a lot of things, but he has no better talent than pointing out to us the lie of history through the legends that we believe in, and yet at the same time, it's not a mission to ruin all your favorite stories. It celebrates them.
Yeah.
And it's a dark film. I mean, for
Sure.
when I was a kid, I struggled with it because a lot of bad, evil, terrible things happen in that movie that
That's
the
exactly what I was
filmmakers
going to
don't
say.
seem to care about, but
Yeah.
that you as a child freak out about.
Yeah, you mentioned Brazil. You mentioned Munchausen.
Yep. To me, those are kind of a trilogy.
Yeah, Time Bandits to me was always the most. Being a kid in the '80s was, I was accessible. I didn't know that's not the word that I used when I was a kid, obviously.
Well,
but
it was
to me,
aimed at us. It was aimed at
us
kids, no
yeah,
question.
Exactly.
The hero is a kid.
Yeah,
you know.
and so that's why Time Bandits would be on my list over those other two, is because I was a kid during this time, and the movie was aimed at me.
Well, and I consider Brazil more science fiction. It's more of a dark utopia, dystopia.
Yeah.
It's in that category rather than fantasy.
Brazil might be seen in,
but they all
a
have
future
their
list.
fantastical elements. Time Bandit is straight up fantasy, but it's designed to. If you're a kid, it's not designed to give you. It's not designed to get you to buy the action figures. It's designed to toughen you up.
Sure.
To a harsh world out there that isn't always going to kowtow to your bravery or your good intentions, and that's a tough lesson to learn, but it's a really good movie.
Oh, I was hoping I could work this out. I got a bad cramp in my foot.
Oh no.
Oh man, reality is creeping in on our podcast
into our fantasy.
our
It's
fantasy.
Totally interrupting us, but
damn you, cramp. Sorry. Okay.
yeah, those things
all right.
happen.
So number 8 on our list is from 1982. Just a fantastic, fun movie.
Yeah.
Beastmaster. Mark Singer is the Beastmaster.
There's that old Dennis Miller joke that HBO back in the 80s stood for, hey, Beastmaster's on.
I hadn't heard that one.
Well,
that's actually really
boy,
good.
did I watch Beastmaster a lot of times
Me
on
too.
HBO in
Me
the
too.
80s. And it was always on.
It was always on.
So that joke is apropos and, definitely fits.
Very few movies did more to make the appeal of ferrets seem like something.
Any kid, no matter how you reacted to all the other horrific, weird things in that film, because it's a trippy, dark movie. It's a dark fantasy, and it is here at number 8 in place of the other kind of more renowned dark fantasy of 1982, which didn't make either of our lists.
No, it didn't make our list because Beastmaster was there.
Right. I think it shouldn't have to be either or, but I think it was in this case, which is Conan the Barbarian, which you're not going to hear us talk about much. They're both the exact same template of a story.
Right.
A matter of fact, the first acts of them are virtually identical. The reason Beastmaster for me over Conan, and like I said, you don't have to choose out there in movie land. You can have them both, and we're glad that we do.
Feel free to disagree with us.
Yeah, go
and
for
you
it.
can disagree with us on Twitter at
That's right.
Ask Joel and Ryan.
Check it out.
Yeah,
that's a perfect place to disagree with us. But we picked Beastmaster over Conan for our 1982 dark fantasy, just because of those elements, the ferrets, the animals. I think the animals, as cool as Conan's sidekicks are, and they are cool. Mark Singer's, Bengal tiger, clearly painted black, and the hawk that refused to fly. That's my favorite bit of trivia from Beastmaster was every time they needed the hawk to do something, they had to take it up in a hot air balloon and drop it out of a trapdoor in the bottom because it just wouldn't fly. It just would just belligerently wouldn't fly. Yeah. Just look at you and
what a diva.
Totally. And most of all, without question, the ferrets.
Right.
Those ferrets made every kid who watched the Beastmaster wanted a pair of ferrets as pets immediately that afternoon.
Yeah, we did. My brother and I thought we could, there's two of us. We could each have a ferret.
Yeah, perfect, right?
Yeah.
I had two brothers, so I'd have had to share my ferret, which I would not have liked. And my parents wouldn't have bought us two. They'd have bought us one ferret, and we'd all have to fight over it. And I mean, that was just the Harris household. You had to share, and none of us were particularly good at that, unfortunately.
And clearly it worked out because both in the Harris household and in the Listman household, there was not a ferret to be found.
Yeah. Two households, zero ferrets. Beastmaster's fantastic. It's probably the most R-rated PG movie ever made. It's got full frontal nudity. It's got some of the most twisted, weirdest fantasy violence in any film I've seen. Not quite as heavy as the stuff in Conan, but really competitive with it.
The things that with the wings that suck it and just
and the
bones
poison
fall out,
they pour in the ears to turn those people into crazy berserker people, and the way those priests are like sacrificial, and children get sacrificed, and I mean it's spooky. It is dark fantasy, and even though it does say PG on it and has a lot of fluffy animals on the cover, it's great, but do beware.
Yep. All right, so number 7. This movie has already made an appearance in one of the first episodes, in episode number 2 of this podcast. Clash of the Titans.
Clash of the Titans.
Get your calibos on.
Harryhausen's last stand as a filmmaker.
Absolutely. Harry Hamlin.
Yep.
A host of superstars.
Really.
Like classic old.
If you like really old people acting in a really weird, dumb movie, that's the movie for you. You got Olivier, you got Burgess Meredith as genius.
And you see in their eyes, they're like, I have no idea.
And
why I'm here.
Maggie Smith, actually, we'll call it a young Maggie Smith, is ruthless in that movie. She's fantastic.
Yeah. Terrific movie. I don't think we need
and Harry Hamlin's physique and his hair.
Yep, and giant scorpions and
Medusa. The Kraken.
The Kraken.
Release the Kraken.
Yeah, great Kraken sequence. Great Medusa sequence. Even Harry Hamlin on flying on Pegasus.
It's stop motion, it's that herky jerky Jason of the Argonauts. What's the other one? The Middle Eastern one that he did a bunch of movies. Sinbad.
Sinbad.
It's that style of animation, but if you can embrace that, and you have to like Clash of the Titans, but if you can, like we do, it's so inventive and just it really does take you back to those myths, and you get to see Mount Olympus.
It's silly fun. It's it's a good time.
And it's also kind of dark, I have to say. Yeah. Not as dark as Beastmaster, but
few things are.
The Medusa sequence is particularly gruesome.
Yeah. All right, so number 6. Now this one you're gonna have to explain to me because it came up on the list, but then when we typed the list up fully, you talked about. You have in here a director's cut, a European version.
There's a bunch of different versions of this movie, and depending on the version, it shows up in different parts of my list.
Oh, interesting. They see that. So
they make a difference.
That, Tom Cruise starring in 1985's Legend.
Yeah, but Tim Curry is really the star.
Tim Curry's
of Legend. Even though he doesn't show up till halfway through the movie, he is darkness.
Yeah, he's great, and he's so... great makeup, special effects on him.
Yeah,
he looks like everything you would want. A demon, like a Satan, a true, just
his name in the
archetypal-
movie is Darkness,
and it's so good.
It's really great. Legend, I don't go too much into the minutia of it, but Legend has 3 different versions. It's got a European version with an orchestral musical score by Jerry Goldsmith that's a little bit longer. It's got a U.S. version, which is the shortest and sort of the most neutered. It's about 90 minutes. It's got an electronic music score by Tangerine Dream, which is a great electronic musical score. I still prefer the Goldsmith because Legend is a fairy tale. It's a dark, again, it is these we start out with the darker films. It's a dark fairy tale, and it has, we were joking earlier, but it has unicorns and goblins and demons and transformations, and it's got spells and curses. It's what it calls back to visually and in tone is Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast. It's the only movie up till that point that it's even comparable to.
Yeah.
It's got this great artificial set that's built in the giant studio in England. Actually, they burned down the studio while they were making it. But it feels expansive. It feels wonderfully artificial, like a fairy tale, and yet you can't feel the back wall of the studio. It feels like this magical world that goes on forever. It's got romance in it, but you almost feel like the filmmakers or the gods of the world of the story are not interested in the romance. Like even when the movie's over and our heroes triumph somewhat, that movie feels like all you've really done is hold darkness off for another day.
Yeah.
It has this real serious dread over it, even though it's told in a childlike sort of way with weird voices and all this. And the last thing I'll say about it, because again, we've got to cruise through this big-ass list. It has what might be my favorite or maybe my second favorite. It's in the top 3 film sequence of all time in it. In the middle of it, there is a dance that our princess heroine has with herself in this dreamlike ballet sequence. And I mean, Ridley Scott directed it and conceived of it, and Alex Thompson, the great British cinematographer, shot it, and this art direction, it just makes your mouth water. It's amazing. And Mia Sara, who plays this woman, does this dance sequence. It's right before the big reveal of Tim Curry as Darkness in the movie. And I mean, it's just, every time I see it, I just am floored by it. It's such a beautiful, magical, scary, it's very frightening sequence. And it's kind of funny. All my favorite, just as an aside, all my favorite sequences from movies are dance sequences. Isn't that weird?
That is weird.
But the one in the middle of Legend, and all versions have it, and it's great in all versions at least, is Legend. And I recommend the director's cut. It's 2 hours. Yep. It's a more adult version of the movie. It's a little rough around the edges because it's just a work print that they found in storage. That version was never released, but the director's cut, the 2 hour version with the Jerry Goldsmith score of Legend. Check it out. You won't be disappointed. If you already like fantasy and you somehow that one slipped by, check it out. And if you saw it when you were a kid like I did and didn't really like it, check out the director's cut again, because it's a whole new way of viewing it.
Yeah. Of course, now in my head, all I'm going to be thinking about is when Ryan's here by himself.
Yeah.
It's just he's filming his own dance sequences.
Yeah, well, I'm not filming them, but
okay, well, or just living them.
Yeah, I don't want to.
You know what? That's just.
I don't want a public record of.
That's just good advice, everyone. Live your dance sequence. All right, number 5. We're gonna go to the complete opposite end of the fantasy spectrum,
which is good because we've been dwelling in.
We have been
the depths for a bit here.
It does paint our childhood as a pretty bleak, dark place. But a classic film, and I'm sure for a lot of people this would be much higher on their lists. But
maybe
for us, but for us this is number 5, and we
think that's a great place. Think of what we've already named.
That's true. 1987.
Yeah.
The Rob Reiner film, The Princess Bride.
Right, the great William Goldman bedtime story, Princess Bride. Which, before you launch into it, because this is you're back in this movie big time.
Yeah.
It's a bedtime story. There's almost nothing really fantasy in it. other than the guy dies and comes back to life. Spoiler alert. It's about a kingdom that has not a lot of magic or any goofiness like that.
Yeah,
but still very much a fantasy in tone and in style and delivery.
And it's got heroes who are really human, but yet they're still larger than life.
Yeah.
You have, it is a really wonderful performance from Cary Elwes. It's the movie that gave the world, for better or for worse, Mandy Patinkin.
Oh, well.
And
we could argue with that, but certainly Mandy makes an impression.
Well, yeah, he makes an impression. I mean,
Princess Bride, no doubt.
I think that's the man to this day still ends concerts doing.
Yeah,
doing
it's certainly his most
catchphrase.
requested line from any film he's been in.
And I guess depending on his mood it will determine whether he does it or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a fun, fanciful, lighthearted romance. It's it has Andre the Giant in it, and Andre the Giant could not be more charming.
And it's great because Andre the Giant's such a great guy, and his legacy, I think, without Princess Bride would be something very different. I think him getting a chance to be in that movie and play this most huggable guy kind of all time, because I think that's what a lot like what Andre was in real life, and I'm really grateful that he was given that chance.
Thinking about The Princess Bride as an adult now, to me, like Fred Savage, the boy in the movie who's getting the story told, he's having the story told to him
by a great Peter Falk.
Yeah, as his grandfather. The movie makes romance accessible to a little boy. A 1980s era, Reagan era boy.
Yeah.
And it makes it, you're the romance, the epicness, the heartbreak, the heart swellingness of it. Yeah, I mean it makes it okay.
And again, the quotability. If anything on our list tops the list in quotability, it's gotta be Princess Bride.
Yeah, exactly. And absolutely. And it's got these great swashbuckling sword sequences. I meant to look that up. I meant to look up who choreographed the fight sequences.
That'll be hard for me to look up because they usually bury that.
Yeah, So I meant to do that before today, and I
completely
forgot.
But kudos to you, whoever you are. It's delightful. It's like it's like a dance sequence, if I dare say.
Oh, dance sequence.
Well,
so The Princess Bride. It's a wonderful movie. You know it. I know it. We all know it. The Princess Bride. If you haven't seen it, what is wrong with you?
And I stress, Princess Bride is a bedtime story in every sense.
Yeah.
It is literally, because he's telling him this story. It's not really bedtime, but he's sick in bed. And it only deals with the characters that are extremely relevant. It has a very small scope, but a very big heart, like you said. And every single performance in it is played to the hilt for maximum effectiveness. Wallace Shawn and Christopher Guest, and you can just go down the list. Robin Wright, and it's full of great characters being performed greatly.
All right, so let's get on this. Let's keep going here. Number 4.
Yeah.
1981 movie.
Back to the Darkness.
Yeah, Back to the Darkness with Dragon Slayer.
I love Dragon Slayer, and Dragon Slayer really challenged me in 1981 when it came out, because Dragon Slayer, it's got some fun goofiness in it, but that's window dressing for what is a absolutely terrible world that these people live into. This medieval world where this dragon is appeased by virgin sacrifices, once a year, is just an awful, horrible, difficult to survive in place. And that sort of blows my mind. And there's, as a side thing, Dragon Slayer takes place in a medieval world where Christianity is just reaching the British Isles for the first time. And I don't know, it's not, that stuff isn't in there by accident. I don't know necessarily what it means, so I'm not going to go into deep analysis by that. Yeah. But Ian McDiarmid plays this born again monk guy, the preacher of his day, and he's Ian McDiarmid, who y'all know as, the only thing he's really known as is the Emperor in the Star Wars films, Emperor Palpatine. But any chance you get to see him, he was a crazy, wacky British character actor, and every time he's in something, whatever the role is, he finds a way to make every second of screen time count, and he does in Dragon Slayer. Otherwise, it's the story of a sorcerer that dies, who this village they've asked him to help to slay this dragon so that the teenage girls of their village no longer have to be killed.
Right.
There's one sacrificial sequence in about 40 minutes into it that is, I mean, it's really, really scary and really intense. Dragon Slayer was put out by Disney, actually. It was a co-production between Disney and Paramount, and Disney has since kind of disowned it. But and then finally the dragon. George R.R. Martin said that the dragon in Dragon Slayer is the greatest dragon in all of media. I wish I could remember his name. It's a great dragon name, like Thermatrax Rex.
Thurman Thomas.
Yeah.
Thurman Thomas.
That is it, isn't it? Thurman Thomas?
Yeah. And after he started,
it's terrifying. He's a dragon with. It's actually a she, I think, and it's a dragon with some very conservative ideas, and is not the least bit hesitant when it's an old dragon who's dying and is grumpy and just wants to take it out on humanity.
Yeah.
And the king, who's a completely worthless leader, just a worthless rich guy, is enabling it, and our hero's got to fight to kill this thing. And I mean, it's one of those where you're really not sure how it's going to shake out completely, because the film demonstrates continuously throughout that just because you're on the right side of stuff does not make you safe in Dragon Slayer. The dragon effects are amazing, full size models and things, and then the when you finally see it at the end, like a lot of our childhood films, they only had so much coinage, so you really only get the big whatever it is at the end. But the end battle is all that you could want it to be. It's a fantastic story.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen that. I'm gonna have to check that one.
It's a good one. There's not a high def version of it. It's it hasn't been very well cared for.
Disney,
unfortunately.
Disney. There's a bunch of movies, and one of my favorite movies, which will appear when we do a sci-fi list. So I'm not going to share the name of it, but it's a Disney movie, and it's pretty dark, and it's seemingly kind of really not talked about. Well,
early 80s, Disney tried to do a bunch of adult films, not adult, but children's films that pushed the edge of what was acceptable. And, the whole list, actually, I like them all one way or another, but none of them were the runaway hits that Disney wanted.
Oh,
so
sure.
They pretty quickly abandoned that. And then just a few short years later, when, Little Mermaid came out, then the template completely flipped.
Yep. Then they went,
we're doing this again. Great.
Yep.
And that's really what they're best at anyway.
All right. So number 3. So that was number 4, Dragon Slayer. Number 4.
Yep.
Number 3. Oh man, this movie so much fun, so weird. 1982's The Dark Crystal.
Ugh.
So weird, so wonderful. Jim Henson, Frank Oz co-directed it, or credited as co-directors.
But it's basically a Muppet movie, but it's a completely different kind of...
It is, the story of the Gelflings and the Skeksis. The Skeksis and, oh man, what is that other... the split. Yeah, there's a split between the Skeksis and this other...
I watch Dark Crystal once a year, but... I'm really bad at remembering weird fantasy names.
Yeah,
so I'm not going to be any help.
But we follow a young Gelfling named Jem, and who is questing to try to stop the Skeksis, and it's so wonderful. It is. It's a Muppet. It is a dark.
There are no
Muppet
human
tale.
characters.
There's no human characters. It's all
it's
done.
A fully Muppet,
and it's tremendous. It's boy, I can't really even. There's. It's tough. It's tough to even think of things to say about the film, just because it's so unique. But yeah, the Skeksis as a Muppet, as a character, as a thing, completely creepy, fantastically creepy.
Yeah. Yeah, they're like, it's almost like they're a bunch of like evil things, except they're in a retirement home or something.
Yes.
I don't know quite how to describe it, but the bad guys are just they're related and they kind of rely on each other for different things, but they're just mean to each other and they're always bickering about stuff and they're evil in an almost disturbingly relatable way.
Yeah.
If that makes
Almost,
any sense.
in a wonder. I mean, it's.
Whereas
I think
the other ones whose name we can't figure out, but the good guys who share a very specific relationship with the bad guys, a very symbiotic one, ultimately, they're just basically a bunch of hippies who are chilling out and maybe getting high and just
I think that the movie is
getting
clearly
in tune with nature.
Yeah, is clearly sort of you have the Skeksis who are the sort of the bureaucratic. Just back. Everything's political. Everything's an angle, and then you have their yang to their yin. They're just all about kind of communing with nature.
Gary Kurtz, the producer who produced Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back and lots of other things, but The Dark Crystal, he's always said that he thinks if the two Gelflings, the young boy and the young girl, had been played by people, they might have had a movie that would have not sort of fallen flat out of the gate. He believes that they cast two kids surrounded by all this mystical stuff.
Yeah.
It's hard to say whether that would have worked or not.
That's right. I mean, because there has been talk, and it is in the works, a sort of a reboot
of Dark
Crystal. So they'll be curious to see, do they go that route?
It'll be interesting.
Do they go that route? All right, so that is number 3.
We also got
at this point.
Because you're not going to hear its name here in the next two, we'll just give a shout-out to the other big Jim Henson fantasy, Labyrinth.
Yep.
Didn't make our list.
Yeah, well, I never was a big fan of it, so it was not even remotely on my list.
It's fun. I like it, but I feel the same way. It's not.
I mean, I appreciate the iconicness of David Bowie's character in it,
and maybe we're a couple of guys. That's our hero in that story is a young girl like there were lots of young girls in the 80s, and I don't know if that's why we didn't relate to it as much, but maybe we're giving it an unfair bias because of that. Because there's not a stand-in for us in that movie like there is in almost all the rest of these.
That's true.
It's just something to think about.
All right, so number 2 on our list. So oddly enough, and when you hear these titles, oddly enough, number 2 and number 1 on both of our lists.
We're unanimous. That's never happened before, folks.
And it shocked us both, frankly. But number 2 is from later in the 80s, 1988.
Yep.
The Ron Howard
sort
movie.
of the last hurrah of 80s fantasy movies.
Yeah, it really was.
They really went out with a bang. They gave it their best, put their best foot forward in terms of filmmaking.
Absolutely, with Willow. With Warwick Davis, Val Kilmer, Joanne Whalley.
Yep.
Just a spectacularly
fantastic late in life performance by Billy Barty.
Right.
A great sort of behind the mask performance by Pat Roach, who's who always, if whatever movie you're watching, he's from the 80s, he's the one your hero is killing in some way.
It was Val Kilmer at his most Real Genius-y.
Well, he had just been in Real Genius and Top Gun, but he wasn't super famous yet.
No, I mean, he had. I mean, but there's
Top Gun maybe, but he wasn't a big movie star. This was the first time where
and he was tasked with sort of being the big hero, the kind of the romantic hero.
Willow is our hero without question, and in the movie goes on to prove that. But he's the charismatic leading man that comes in early on in the film. And
he's the rogue. He's the Han Solo of the piece.
You bet.
And as Mad Mortigan.
Yep.
And Mad Mardigan. And stunningly beautiful Joanne Whalley.
She looks great, and New Zealand looks great and is used very well. First fantasy movie I'm aware of that utilized New Zealand.
Right, and
they all do now.
And it has it was George Lucas produced.
Yep.
and
written.
and written and use. And
it's very Star Warsy in its
very
structure.
Star Warsy, and it's very Star Warsy in its not only in its structure but in certainly in its special effects. It uses
Dennis Muren, the same guy who And I'll just say there's 4 sequences in Willow, and these really push it over the top. The story is very much an archetypal story. I don't think there's anything new that you get from the story.
Think so.
But they hang this incredible beer cart chase that they have. There's a sledding sequence that's just out of this world cool. Yep. There's a giant mutant dragon, 2-headed dragon monster that they have to slay.
Yep.
There's a really good, actually pretty down and dirty hand-to-hand combat assault on the bad guy's castle at the end.
Yeah.
And like you pointed out at one point, there's a great battle between 2 old warhorse sorceresses.
Yes.
At the end, that really is what the whole thing is hanging on. The film has
Willow's quest isn't for Willow to necessarily defeat.
Yeah.
It's Willow is tasked with going to find the sorcerer, the sorceress that can beat the evil Queen Bavmorda.
Yeah.
And it's and so we get this big sequence where we have 2 older women just beating the living crap out of each other.
It's really cool.
And it's in a wizarding and also physical way. It's a great sequence.
And James Horner's music also really brings it along nicely. Ron Howard keeps a light touch on it. It's a very, very cool movie that we like a lot, even though its reputation isn't so great. I think fantasy got as good a commercial push at being a big populist entertainment as anyone could have given it in George Lucas's Willow.
Yeah. So that's number 2.
Number 2.
So number 1.
What's it gonna be?
Well, we can tell you what it's not going to be, and this is going to.
I think we owe it to you. To warn you, so that you don't get too mad at us.
As I was telling Ryan
Maybe
before we hit record, as soon as I was counting down the list to her, my wife, when I said, and number 1, my wife jumps in with the Never-Ending Story.
Gotta be
Never-Ending Story, and to which I said, oh goodness gracious, no. No, that is not
on our list
at all. It's look, I know some of you out there listening love this movie to death. It's just not very good.
Yeah, sorry, it's not good.
Yeah.
It's not terrible. I can see the appeal.
Yeah.
There's a lot of design elements and a lot of magical goofiness in it that's great, but there's no real story that I can hang my hat on in it. The lead characters are really poorly directed children. They're not bad children actors. They've been good in other things.
No,
but the German crew and director, I don't think really connected with them.
Yeah, the young boy who is reading the book up in the attic of the school, I guess, because schools have attics where this takes
creepy
place.
attics at the top of your school. Maybe
I guess maybe it was the attic of the theater department or something. But that kid actually, he was all right. Those sequences were more compelling to me.
I don't blame him. He doesn't know what he's looking at. He doesn't know what's going on.
But those sequences to me where he's like trying to run away, trying to hide and read this book, and he's so fascinated by this book and trying to understand it. Oh my God, it's coming to life and blah blah blah. Those were way more compelling to me. Those sequences than the sequences in the fantastical world with Atreyu and Falcor,
we all want to
dragon.
We all want to go for a ride on a flying cocker spaniel, but it just that didn't make our list.
Yeah.
We don't think that holds up very well, and I think we were both a little baffled by it when we were younger as well.
As equally baffling was the fact that this was our number one
I can't
movie.
believe that we were unanimous on this as our top fantasy movie.
Yeah, when we're
going to get raked over the coals.
Absolutely, we will. But I absolutely stand by this as a terrific fantasy movie.
Yeah.
1985, Lady Hawk. So good.
Yeah, take a minute to think. Well, we don't have a minute. We're running out of time.
Can hear everyone
mull that one over.
Screaming at their...
Our favorite fantasy movie of the 80s, and one of my favorite, other than maybe the Lord of the Rings movies or two. My favorite fantasy ever, Lady Hawk. I adore Lady Hawk.
Yeah, it's so terrific. Rutger Hauer and Michelle Pfeiffer play...
Rutger Hauer replacing Kurt Russell at the last second.
Did not know that.
Richard Donner, who directed Lady Hawk, tried to get Rutger to play the bad guy in it.
Oh, sure.
And he's like, no, but I'll play this guy. And he's like, well, no, you're not really.
You're not.
That's not going to help us sell this movie, Although, they had a lot of talk about it, and so whatever. Yeah. Kurt Russell, somehow, whatever, I don't know why, was offered this movie. I mean, I'm not dissing Kurt Russell. He's great. But he was offered this film and took it and then bowed out at the last second. I get why he bowed out. It's a terrible role for him. It just doesn't utilize any of his strengths as an actor, I don't think. And when he did, Rutger was available, and they had to go back to him and grab him. And it probably didn't help sell the movie. I mean, Dick was probably right about that. But, boy, his regal presence, his badassery, his sort of crabbiness, and yet his absolutely, completely 100% demonstrated true love is fully on display in that movie. It's one of his, just shy of Blade Runner, it's his best screen performance of all time.
Yeah, and he and Matthew Broderick have a really fun chemistry.
And Matthew Broderick is basically the Ferris Bueller of the French Middle Ages.
Yeah.
He breaks the fourth wall the entire movie. He does it through praying to God. A lot of people don't like that convention. I love it. I never get old listening to his monologues, and his prayers are hilarious and earnest at the same time. He plays this small time thief who gets tangled up in this amazing curse in this story, or as Leo McKern's character tells him, that now you know the tale, and now, like the rest of it, you're lost in it.
Yeah,
and it's a very powerful moment that they have over this campfire. We both got lost in the story of Lady Hawk, and then the titular character, which we have to bring up, Michelle Pfeiffer. I don't think we don't need to tell you guys what the curse is. You can kind of figure it out. But they reveal it late in the movie, and if you haven't seen it, don't read too much about it. Go see it. Yeah. It's great. If you like 80s cinema, you got to see it.
Yeah, it's terrific. It absolutely works. The conceit of the movie absolutely works.
Michelle Pfeiffer's character, Isabeau, is an amazing female character, a true role model for your young daughters and stuff. She's a woman of action. She's not some warrior woman or whatever. It's not like that, but she constantly fighting for not just her survival, but these high ideals. She's fighting for love and righteousness, and she never ever hesitates to enter the fray. It's a fantastic character, and Michelle, like she did her whole career and still doing, plays it in this most grounded and believable way that you believe she's a person. She's not this perfect princess, even though that's what she is in the story.
So that's right, folks. Lady Hawk.
Lady Hawk, number one.
The best fantasy movie.
It's let down by some music and stuff, some weird choices, but mostly it's just fantastic.
Disagree with us? Do you? Let us know about it. Let us know on Twitter at Ask Joel and Ryan. There are other. You can email us. I'll give all these out later. I want to get on to our.
Yeah, we're over an hour, and we're gonna fly into our last sequence.
We're gonna go into our last sequence.
We're gonna book. Ready?
Yep.
I have a question.
Hey, I have a question too.
I have a question. Who gave you the right to play God?
What the hell's going on out here?
Why do I bother?
What is the point in doing anything?
How dare you!
What more do you want from me?
I have a question.
Yeah, to Ask Joel and Ryan, folks.
Ask Joel and Ryan. All right, this comes from both these questions, if we get to both of them, come from Deanna, our good friend Deanna.
Thanks, Deanna.
Thanks, Deanna.
You asked good questions.
These, you submitted a slew of questions. And, of course, if you have a question that you would like us to answer, I believe it's on Twitter, Ask Joel and Ryan.
Yep.
All right. Of the movies that we listed, these 10 movies, which hero of these movies is the most badass?
The most badass?
Yeah. Who do you think is the most badass of these heroes? So take a
look at the list of
list
movies again. Maybe I can't even do that, but who's the most badass hero?
Yeah.
See.
I'll give you mine. Because
Great,
again, I know these questions.
One. I
know
to
these
pick the right
questions ahead of time, obviously, because I spoke them. Ryan is hearing them for the first time.
Yeah.
I did give him a clue, but the most badass. I want to give a shout out to Tom Cruise's character in Legend because he is absolutely fearless.
Yes.
In that movie,
very resourceful.
Yeah,
too.
and and to a fault, but in some moments. But
sure.
he is absolutely fearless and determined, and to me that it makes him really engaging. But
and he's one of those rare characters who's not motivated by fear. He's motivated by love. You might think that's common, but it's very unusual. Yeah. We as human beings, and certainly the characters that we've written throughout the ages, almost always motivated by fear. Tom Cruise's character, I can't remember his name now, but the leading man in Legend is truly motivated by love and is fearless.
Yeah, and Tom Cruise does a great job making sure that that is clear. I don't want to take it.
Well, very similar in Dragon Slayer. Peter McNichol's character also same kind of thing. I mean, he absolutely never backs down from a challenge. Yep. He only just falters in his belief in himself just slightly in the movie, just really enough to make it dramatically interesting. Otherwise, he's a sorcerer's apprentice who's fighting the biggest, baddest, most evil thing in the kingdom, and he really does himself proud, I think, in that film. Sure. With my comments about, Michelle Pfeiffer's Isabeau Dijon withstanding.
But in like a classic badass sense, to me, it's Mark Singer.
Yeah, well,
because he's the Beastmaster.
He's the big buff Beastmaster.
He's the Beastmaster.
And if Conan were technically on our list, I think it would have been probably Conan. Takes all cakes.
But Arnold did not make our list.
He didn't, but
so it's Mark Singer.
We all agree Conan. If Conan's not lacking for badassery, it's all right there on the screen. Every second of it.
The Lamentations.
Well, he gets crucified and he comes back to wipe out his enemies. He's badass.
Also, just a quick shout out. I don't even know who did it, but someone made a musical of Conan, of Conan the Barbarian.
You go
musical. So
writer.
Hilarious. Where he sings the lamentation of.
So you got another question?
All right.
I have a question.
I do have another question. If you could switch, now this is outside of our list. This has nothing to do with our list. This is open to anything.
Also from Diana.
If you could switch genders to be any character, who would it be? So in our case, we both identify as male.
Yeah.
What female character if you could switch genders, would you be?
It's weird, because the one that immediately came to mind is somebody I would never want to trade places with. So, but I'll just say it because it immediately come to mind, and usually discussion is interesting when you roll with that. Mm-hmm. But it would be Ellen Ripley from the Alien series, right?
Yep.
Because she's a badass, of course.
She is as badass as there is. I mean,
she didn't come into this world a badass. She's very pragmatic. Mm-hmm. She's very maternal. She's really one of the most well-rounded characters and one of the most needed characters in the narratives she finds herself in.
She's a classic hero, not by choice, but have heroism thrust upon her.
For real.
Yeah.
And I'll also say, because I also thought of it just now, is I really admire and like Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio's character in The Abyss.
Oh, yeah. Great one.
Yeah, she's...
Oh, yeah. Wow.
She's got her downside. She's a genius, and so she's a little prickly. But when faced with something just out of this world and unimaginable, this genius engineer character is very quick to embrace what she sees in front of her. Mm-hmm. And, she's kind of the first one to do it. And I find that really, really admirable. I find her motivations really interesting, Yeah. And I always love.
That's a good pull.
I got a lot of women in my life that are like this, and I'm just not like this. I don't know if I'm chicken or I'm very opinionated, but I love when they just step up and tell you what's right. Mm-hmm. When they're faced with something that's not right.
Yeah.
I love that, and she's a character that I think represents that. Really
that's
well.
a great pull. I love that one. It kind of makes mine seem a little shallow.
Well,
but I chose Natasha Romanoff from the Avengers movie.
Yeah, but why not? Natasha Romanoff's fantastic.
Yeah,
character.
because she has no superpowers, she just kicks ass.
She just kicks ass amongst people who are sort of out of this world powerful. Mm-hmm. That's a great pick. She's great. She's got a great sense of humor. She's unlike a lot of badasses, she's very emotionally available to us.
Yeah.
But she never ever lets that be any sort of weakness on her part. Natasha Romanoff's a fantastic character. She lives in a fantastic way in cinema, and that's not a step back. That's a great choice.
So, if you have any questions for us now, by the time you're listening to this, we are available on a multitude of platforms. The podcast is, of course, available at joelandryan.podbean.com. Thank you to the wonderful people at Podbean. We are using their hosting service.
We appreciate it.
We also, by the time you're listening to this, will be available via iTunes, so you can please subscribe and please leave a review. Hopefully a multi-starred review of our podcast. You can also reach us at Ask Joel and Ryan on Twitter. That's probably the quickest, easiest way to get a hold of us if you have a question, if you have something we should talk about.
If you want to be heard on the show, the Twitter is the way to go.
Yeah, and we will absolutely give you shout-outs. We also, please like our page on Facebook, The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan.
Yeah.
And, of course, you can...
And on Facebook, if you can, sorry to slow this down. I know you're booking toward the ending. On Facebook, if you can, please, whenever we post an episode that you like, please share it with people. It's the only way we're going to expand our audience.
And if you hate what we're doing, share it with the people you don't like in their lives.
You don't have to share every little thing we share or every meme we put up or every movie trailer, but please share the episodes if you enjoy them. That really helps us a lot.
As they used to say with Mystery Science Theater 3000, keep the tapes circulating.
Thank you.
You can also reach us at askjoelandryan@gmail.com in traditional email form.
Woo.
So that is it for this week. What do you got coming up this week, Ryan? Anything fun?
Nothing. I'm going to reflect on how awesome this podcast was.
I am going to be, I have to go out of town. I'll be spending a few days in a hotel. So in my downtime, I'm hoping to catch a couple, or I might even venture out and find myself in a darkened theater if I find myself motivated.
Nice.
So we'll see what happens, and we'll talk to you in about a week. Thank you all so much for checking out the podcast this week.
Yeah.
And here we go with our outro music.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.
Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.